K2 at 8,611 meters is the highest Karakoram peak and the second highest in the world, only after Mount Everest. It is also known as the Savage Mountain and is the deadliest, where approximately one person dies on the mountain for every 4 who reach the summit. It is the only 8,000er on the planet that has yet to be summited in winters. The sheer number of plaques is overwhelming. Some are new, some old, some elaborate ones, and some are very simple. Most of these seem to have been brought later by fellow countrymen of the climbers that have perished on K2 over the years. We, however, were looking for the nameplates of 2 Shimshalis who perished in one of the worst mountaineering disasters on K2 in 2008. And only when we found them did we leave back for the base camp. Once again, we climbed down into and then up out of curving crevasses to leave behind Goodwin-Austen Glacier to arrive at the blackish Baltoro Glacier at Concordia. And once past the white ice hills jutting out of the glacier near Gorud 2, the color of the rocks and pebbles under my feet started reflecting the yellow shades of the surrounding peaks.
So we're leaving from Urdugast for Khobuste. It's almost 1:30. You guys can't imagine how many days it has been since I've smelt anything green. You've spent enough time on the mountains, the dry ones, up the Baltoro. And when you come back to the greenery, you just want to smell the greenness, the soil, the freshness. Oh, this is so awesome.
The weather that day was clear enough for more heli rescues. A few more hours on the moraine of Baltoro before we arrived at Khobuste.
"29th July, 4 p.m. and I've reached Khobuste. It's 6:51 a.m. It's 30th July, and what you see in the frame is Uli Biafo in the background, and the new tent that I'm trying. Yeah, we're leaving from Khobuste. We're done with the breakfast, we're done with the packing.
From Khobuste, we set out for Bardomal, which was quite a stretch, but since we were fully acclimatized on higher altitude, therefore it would be slightly less arduous. The weather was clear and we got some awesome views of the Trangos, Uli Biaho and Peju Peak. We had to tiptoe a great deal on rocks, big and small, on the Baltoro before finally arriving at the eye of the glacier, from where the debris-covered mass of ice transforms into a tumultuous river. After descending from the Baltoro, we kept on the west bank of the Braldo River and bypassed the Peju campsite altogether, looking across the river at the rock slide area on the trail that led to Peju. The realization hit me that in life nothing is certain. You may plan and you may prepare, but all it takes is one unaccounted for factor that can change everything forever.
Goodbye, Baltoro. Goodbye, Trangos. Goodbye, Lobsang. Goodbye, Cathedral.
The streams and rivulets were raging with icy cold, muddy water as we kept marching on towards Bardumal, a campsite in between Peju and Jula. Finally, around 3 p.m., we arrived at the fairly flat Bardumal campsite, to the amusing sight of mules frolicking in the dirt. Early next morning, with the sun on our backs from the east, we left for the very long hike to Askoli. The trail up to Jula, although along the river, was dusty, parched and dry. After a short rest at Jula, where we filled up our water bottles, we resumed our long hike back to civilization. And when the only thing remaining in your pockets is the wrappers of the candies and chocolates that you have consumed along the way, you still somehow find the energy to push on and make it to the next campsite. The sun was high up in the sky and frankly quite brutal by now, and it was a welcome relief to finally arrive at Corofon. The glacial stream at Corofon was icy cold and muddy, and there was no point in refilling my bottles despite running low on water. We took a short break in Corofon before entering the home stretch towards Askoli. And when you can see right through to the bottom of your unbreakable Nalgene bottle, and your tongue is so parched that it feels like as if dry cotton has been stuffed inside your mouth and throat, you still somehow find the energy to keep marching on, alone and on your own, towards your destination. Soon after Corofon, I ran out of drinking water, and although I came across spectacular waterfalls, but none of them had drinkable water at this time of the day. Parched and exhausted, I still managed to smile into the camera in anticipation of my arrival into the last village at this corner of civilization. The sights and sounds of Askoli were very welcoming after a grueling month in the dry and rugged mountains.
आपका क्या नाम है? मोहम्मद मुसाब अस्कोले में रहते हैं कि खुरफे में रहते हैं? वो किधर है यार? वो जो होटल है वो किधर है? क्या नाम है? कैंप साइट। ठीक है।
For the first time in my travels to Baltoro, I discovered that there are not one but two campsites in Askoli, and it was indeed a pleasant sight for sore eyes after having to toil for over 30 kilometers in one day. There is something exceptionally soothing about poplar trees swaying in the breeze. Early next morning, after a quick breakfast, the jeeps were ready to take us back to Skardu. As our 7-hour-long journey back to Skardu began, I should have been happy that I was finally going back home to my family and friends, but instead I was already feeling sad. And as we drove through the unpaved alleys of Askoli, I thought fondly of all the people I'd met on the mountains, the Icefall, the trails, and the base camps. regret, if any, at the conclusion of this expedition was the realization of not having done much for the preservation of the fragile ecosystems of these remote and desolate destinations. We, as adventurers, explorers, travelers, and tourists, need to play our part in preservation of these places for our future generations. And while we travel alone or with friends and family, we need to strive to minimize our impact on the environment by not polluting and carrying out our trash. Because if you think of it, it is not too hard to take only photographs and leave only footprints. The journey was long and had its own share of hiccups as we jostled past Shamang, Barjand, Biyangsa, Askoli, Dasu, Sildi, Hyderabad, and then into Sugar Valley before finally arriving in Skardu. Another round of farewells and we were on the flight back to Islamabad, which would take us past Nanga Parbat and back to the land of 4G connectivity and easy and stable access to Wi-Fi. As a mountaineer and a visual storyteller, I have often talked about my journey from a kid who grew up in a posh locale to an adventurer who cheats death on every expedition. Frankly, I still don't know what it is that draws me to these gigantic structures of rock and ice. So ask me not what makes me go on to the rocky ridges and valleys beyond. See you guys again soon on a jeep road, an alpine trail, a crevassed glacier, or a mountain ridge leading to summits and destinations unknown.